Richard Blackstone's hand froze on the Mercedes door handle. "Don't move!" The whisper came from behind his seat, a child's voice, trembling but determined. "Bomb! Under your seat!" He turned slowly. A small black girl, maybe 8 years old, crouched in his back seat like a frightened sparrow. Her clothes were torn, her face smudged with dirt, but her eyes burned with urgent clarity. "I saw the bad man put wires under your car," she whispered. "You have to get out now." Richard didn't question. Something in her voice, pure, desperate honesty, made him believe instantly. He slipped from the driver's seat just as she pushed open the rear door. "Run!" she commanded, grabbing his expensive suit jacket with tiny fingers. They sprinted across the parking lot. Behind them, the Mercedes erupted in a ball of orange flame and twisted metal. Richard stared at the inferno, then at the child who'd saved his life without knowing his name. She was already disappearing into the shadows. Sirens screamed through downtown as fire trucks surrounded the burning Mercedes. Richard stood behind police tape, his designer suit now wrinkled and soot-stained, watching investigators comb through the wreckage. "Professional job," Detective Morrison muttered, holding up twisted metal fragments. "C4 explosive, remote detonator. Someone wanted you very dead, Mr. Blackstone." But Richard wasn't listening. His eyes scanned the shadows where the girl had vanished. Who was she? Why had she risked everything to save a complete stranger? "Sir?" Detective Morrison waved a hand in front of Richard's face. "We need to discuss your security arrangements." "That child," Richard said softly. "She saved my life." "What child?" Richard pointed toward the alley. Empty, as if she'd been a ghost. 3 blocks away, Keisha Washington slipped through a hole in the chain-link fence surrounding an abandoned parking lot. Her heart still hammered from the explosion, but relief flooded through her. The nice man had listened. He was alive. "Keisha, baby, where have you been?" Her mother's voice, weak and raspy, came from inside a rust-eaten Honda Civic with 3 flat tires and a spider-webbed windshield. Denise Washington lay across the back seat, wrapped in a moth-eaten blanket. Her face was gray with exhaustion, her breathing shallow. The cancer was winning. "Just walking, Mama." Keisha crawled into the front seat, which served as her bed. She didn't mention the bomb, the explosion, or saving someone's life. Mama had enough worries. "Did you eat today?" Denise struggled to sit up. "Yes, Mama." A lie. The soup kitchen had run out before Keisha reached the front of the line. "Good baby. You're such a good girl." Keisha smiled and tucked the blanket around her mother's shoulders. Through the cracked windshield, she could see smoke rising from downtown. She wondered if the man with kind eyes was okay. Back at Blackstone Industries, Richard paced his corner office overlooking the city. His assistant brought fresh clothes, but he couldn't focus on changing. The girl's face haunted him, those eyes that had seen too much, the way she'd commanded him to run without a trace of hesitation. His business partner, Marcus Davidson, burst through the office door, his face a mask of concern. "Richard, thank God you're alive. I heard about the car. Someone tried to kill me, Marcus." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Who would do such a thing?" "That's what I intend to find out." Richard turned toward the window. "And I'm going to find the child who saved me." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Child?" "A little girl. She warned me about the bomb, risked her life for a stranger." Richard's voice carried a wonder he hadn't felt in years. "When was the last time you saw someone do something purely good, Marcus? No agenda, no profit motive, just kindness." "Richard, you're in shock. Let's focus on security." "No!" Richard's voice grew firm. "I'm going to find her, and I'm going to thank her properly." As Marcus left the office, his concerned expression melted into something darker. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "We have a problem," he whispered into the receiver. "There was a witness." Meanwhile, in the broken Honda, Keisha held her mother's hand as Denise drifted into fitful sleep. Outside, city lights twinkled like distant stars, each one representing a warm home, a full refrigerator, a safe bed. Keisha didn't envy the people in those homes. Grandma had taught her that happiness came from doing right, not having much. Today, she's done right. A man was alive because she'd chosen to help instead of hide. That had to count for something. She pressed her face against the cold window and whispered a prayer for the kind-eyed man, hoping he'd stay safe. She didn't know that across the city that same man was moving heaven and earth to find her. She didn't know that her simple act of kindness had set wheels in motion that would change both their lives forever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and new choices. But tonight, in a broken car with a dying mother, Keisha Washington slept peacefully, her conscience clear as starlight. The next morning, Richard's security team presented him with a stack of surveillance footage, 23 cameras, 17 angles, and one clear image, a small figure slipping through shadows moments before the explosion. "Enhance Sector 7, Richard commanded, leaning over the technician's shoulder. The pixelated image sharpened, a girl, maybe 8 years old, moving with the practiced stealth of someone who'd learned to be invisible. She paused at his Mercedes, looked around carefully, then noticed something underneath the chassis that made her freeze in terror. "There," Richard pointed. She saw whoever planted the bomb. His head of security, Carter, frowned at the screen. "Kid's probably homeless. They camp in the industrial district. Want me to canvass the area?" "Carefully," Richard warned. "She's not a suspect. She's a hero." 3 miles away, Keisha crouched behind a dumpster, watching 2 men in dark suits question the soup kitchen volunteers. Her stomach clenched with hunger and fear. "Little girl, about 8, dark hair," one of them said, showing a photo. "Might have been around the Blackstone building yesterday." Mrs. Rodriguez, who ran the kitchen, shook her head firmly. "No children here yesterday. The kitchen was closed for repairs." The lie came so naturally, so protectively, that Keisha's heart swelled with gratitude. Mrs. Rodriguez had spotted her hiding and was buying her time. When the men left, Keisha slipped away through back alleys she knew like a map. Someone was looking for her. Someone dangerous. She made it back to the parking lot as her mother was having another coughing fit, this one worse than usual. Blood specks dotted the tissue when Denise pulled it away from her mouth. "Mama, you need a doctor." "Doctors cost money, baby." Denise's voice was barely a whisper. "Money we don't have." Keisha bit her lip. The free clinic had a 3-week waiting list. 3 weeks her mother didn't have. "I saw something yesterday," Keisha said quietly. "Something bad." Denise struggled to focus. "What kind of bad?" "A man putting wires under a fancy car, then later, boom." Keisha gestured toward downtown where smoke still wisped skyward. "But I told the carman to run, he's okay." "Oh, baby." Denise's eyes filled with tears. "You can't get involved in grown-up problems, promise me." But it was too late. The grown-up problems had already found them. At Blackstone Industries, Marcus Davidson paced his office like a caged predator. His phone buzzed with updates from his hired men. "Still no sign of that kid," the voice reported. "But we're getting close. Someone's protecting her." Marcus's jaw tightened. The bomb should have ended this cleanly. Richard dead, Marcus inheriting control of the company through their partnership agreement, plus a hefty life insurance payout. Simple. Profitable. Now there was a witness. A child who'd seen him plant the device. "Find her," Marcus snarled into the phone. "And when you do, make sure she can't talk to anyone. Ever." He hung up and composed his face into concern just as Richard knocked on his door. "Any leads on who might want you dead?" Marcus asked, playing his role perfectly. Richard shook his head. "But I'm going to find that girl. She deserves to be rewarded for her courage. Richard, maybe you should let sleeping dogs lie. Whoever did this might target anyone connected to you. Are you saying I should abandon the child who saved my life?" Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm saying some stones are better left unturned." After Richard left, Marcus made another call. "Change of plans. Find the girl, but don't harm her yet. Use her as leverage. If Richard gets too close to the truth, we'll need insurance." Back in the abandoned lot, Keisha watched her mother sleep and felt the weight of impossible choices. Save a stranger and endanger her family. Stay silent and let evil win. Grandma's voice echoed in her memory. "Baby girl, sometimes doing right feels wrong at first, but wrong, that feels right, that's the devil talking." Keisha pulled her thin jacket tighter and made her decision. Tomorrow she'd find the kind-eyed man, not for reward or recognition, but because the men in dark suits were still looking for her, which meant they were still dangerous. If she was going to be hunted anyway, she might as well help catch the real monster. Richard found her at dawn, sitting on the steps of St. Mary's Cathedral. She looked even smaller in daylight. A tiny figure wrapped in a jacket 3 sizes too big, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of hope. "You're a hard person to find," he said gently, settling beside her on the cold stone steps. Keisha tensed, ready to bolt, but something in his voice stopped her. No threat, no demand, just gratitude. "You're the car man." Not a question. "Richard Blackstone." He extended his hand formally, as if she were an important business partner. "And you saved my life." Keisha studied his face, the kind eyes she remembered now creased with exhaustion and worry. Slowly, she shook his hand with her small, cold fingers. "Keisha Washington." "Nice to meet you, Keisha Washington." Richard's voice carried genuine warmth. "I owe you everything." "You don't owe me anything." She pulled her jacket tighter. "Mama taught me to help people. That's just what you do." Richard felt something crack open in his chest. When had he last heard such simple, pure morality? In his world, everything had a price, an angle, a hidden agenda. "Your mama sounds wise." Keisha's expression clouded. "She's sick. I'm really sick. And men in suits have been asking about me." Her young voice carried old fear. "I think they're the bad men." "What bad men?" "The ones who put the bomb under your car." Keisha looked directly at him. "I saw everything." Richard's blood chilled. This child wasn't just his savior. She was the key witness to his attempted murder, and someone was hunting her. "Keisha, I need to ask you something very important. Do you trust me?" She considered this seriously, studying his face with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read adults for survival signs. "My grandma used to say you can tell good people by their eyes. Scared people got shifty eyes. Mean people got dead eyes. Good people—" She tilted her head. "Good people got sad eyes, like they care too much about everything." Richard almost smiled. "And what kind of eyes do I have?" "Sad ones, but the kind of sad that wants to fix things." She paused. "Yeah, I trust you. Then let me help you. Let me protect you and your mother. We don't take charity." Pride straightened her small shoulders. "It's not charity. It's payment for saving my life, a debt I need to repay." Keisha shook her head firmly. "Doing right ain't supposed to get you paid. That's just being good." Richard stared at this 8-year-old philosopher who spoke wisdom his Harvard MBA had never taught him. In her tattered clothes and with her empty stomach, she had more integrity than most people in his boardroom. "What if I told you that letting me help would actually help other people too?" Keisha's eyes sharpened with interest. "The men who tried to kill me, they're going to hurt other people if we don't stop them, but I need your help to catch them. I need to know what you saw." "And if I help you catch the bad men, you'll make sure they can't hurt anybody else?" "I promise." Keisha stood up, decision made. "My mama's in the old parking lot on 7th Street. She needs medicine real bad." Her voice stayed strong, but her hands trembled slightly. "And Mr. Richard? The bad man who planted the bomb? I know his face. I seen him before, talking to other men in suits, planning things." Richard rose beside her. "Will you show me?" "Yeah, but first we gotta help my mama." She looked up at him with those ancient eyes. "That's the deal. You help the people who need help first, then we catch the bad guys." As they walked toward 7th Street, Richard realized that in trying to save Keisha, she was teaching him how to save himself. The abandoned parking lot looked like a graveyard for broken dreams. Rust-eaten cars sat on flat tires, some missing doors, others serving as makeshift shelters. Richard's pristine suit felt obscene against such desperate poverty. "Mama, I brought help!" Keisha called softly to the Honda Civic. Denise Washington emerged slowly from the back seat, her movements careful and pained. When she saw Richard, suspicion flashed across her gaunt features. "Keisha, baby, who is this man?" "The one I told you about, from the car." Richard stepped forward, removing his expensive watch and wedding ring, placing them in his jacket pocket. Small gestures, but they softened his imposing presence. "Mrs. Washington, your daughter saved my life yesterday. I'd like to return the favor." Denise's laugh turned into a coughing fit that left blood on her lips. "Mister, you can't save what's already dying." "Mama, don't say that." Keisha's voice cracked. Richard knelt down to Denise's eye level. "My company has a relationship with Mercy General Hospital, the best oncology department in the state. Let me make some calls." "We can't pay. I'm not asking you to." Richard's voice remained gentle. "Your daughter risked her life to save mine. The least I can do is ensure you get proper medical care." Denise studied his face, searching for the catch, the hidden price. She'd learned that kindness from rich people usually came with strings attached. "What do you want from us?" "The truth about what Keisha saw, and your permission to protect you both while we figure out who tried to kill me." 30 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. Not the underfunded city service, but a private medical transport Richard had arranged with a single phone call. As paramedics checked Denise's vitals and prepared her for transport, Keisha held her mother's hand. "Mr. Richard, this lady needs immediate admission," the lead paramedic reported. "Stage 4 lung cancer, pneumonia complications. Should have been hospitalized weeks ago." Richard nodded grimly. In his world, money solved problems instantly. In Keisha's world, people died because they couldn't afford to live. As they drove to the hospital in Richard's replacement car, a modest sedan that wouldn't draw attention, Keisha sat in the passenger seat, staring out at the city she'd never seen from this angle. "Tell me about the bomb," Richard said gently. "I was looking for food in the dumpsters behind your building. Sometimes the restaurant throws away good stuff." No shame in her voice, just matter-of-fact survival. "I saw a man in a fancy suit kneeling by your car. I had a bag with wires and stuff. Can you describe him? Tall, white, gray hair, but not old gray, expensive gray, and he kept checking his watch like he was timing something." Richard's stomach dropped. Gray hair, expensive suit, always checking his watch. The description fit Marcus Davidson perfectly. "Keisha, did you see his face clearly?" "Real clear. He was maybe 10 feet away. And Mr. Richard?" She turned to face him. "He looked at your building and smiled. Not a nice smile, a mean one, like he was happy about something bad." At Mercy General, Richard's influence opened doors that had been locked to people like Denise for years. Within an hour, she was in a private room with an oncology team developing an aggressive treatment plan. "Mr. Blackstone, we can't promise miracles," Dr. Sarah Kim explained. "But if she'd come to us 2 weeks ago, her prognosis would be much better. Delayed treatment due to financial constraints is one of our biggest challenges." Richard made a mental note, another problem his foundation would address. In the hospital room, Denise looked smaller against the white sheets, but her breathing was already easier thanks to IV antibiotics and oxygen support. "Mama, you gonna be okay?" Keisha whispered, holding her hand. "Because of your courage, baby girl." Denise's voice was stronger already. "You saved this man, and now he's saving us." Richard stepped forward. "Mrs. Washington, I need to ask something difficult. The man who tried to kill me, I think I know who it is. But if I'm right, you and Keisha could be in danger. I can provide protection, safe housing, and security. But it means trusting me completely." "Mama, he's got sad eyes," Keisha said. "The good kind of sad." Denise smiled weakly. "My grandmother always said you could judge a man by how he treats children and people who can't do nothing for him." She looked at Richard. "You didn't have to help us, but you did, without asking for anything back." "Then you'll let me protect you?" "We'll help each other," Denise corrected. "That's how good people do things." 2 hours later, in Richard's downtown office, security cameras revealed the truth. The timestamp showed Marcus Davidson in the parking garage at 4:17 p.m. the previous day, carrying a small black bag. At 4:22 p.m., he emerged empty-handed, checking his watch and smiling. "Son of a bitch," Richard whispered. His business partner, his friend of 15 years, had tried to murder him. "Mr. Richard?" Keisha studied the frozen image on the screen. "That's him. That's the bomb man. Why would he want to hurt you?" she asked with the directness only children possessed. "Money," Richard said simply. "If I died, he'd inherit my company. $50 million. $50 million? Keisha's eyes widened. "That's enough to feed every hungry kid in the city." Her innocent observation hit Richard like a physical blow. Marcus was willing to kill for money that could save thousands of lives instead. "We're gonna stop him, right?" Keisha asked. Richard looked down at this 8-year-old girl who'd saved his life, trusted him completely, and now spoke of justice with unwavering certainty. "Yes, we're going to stop him." "Good." Keisha nodded firmly. Bad people shouldn't win. Ever. As Richard arranged for a safe house and round-the-clock protection, he realized something profound had shifted. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been quarterly profit margins. Now he was ready to risk everything to protect a homeless child who'd shown him what real courage looked like. Keisha Washington had saved more than his life. She'd saved his soul. The safe house sat in an upscale residential neighborhood, a two-story colonial with a white picket fence that looked like something from a magazine. For the first time in months, Keisha slept in a real bed with clean sheets that smelled like lavender instead of car exhaust. She woke to sunlight streaming through actual curtains, not cracked windshields. For a moment, she forgot where she was and panicked, looking for her mother. Then memory returned. Mama was safe at the hospital, getting medicine that actually worked. Downstairs, Richard sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by financial documents and legal files. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept at all. "Morning," he said, looking up as Keisha padded into the kitchen in borrowed pajamas 3 sizes too big. "How did you sleep?" "Like the dead." She paused, realizing what she'd said. "Sorry, bad words." "Not bad words, honest words." Richard smiled tiredly. "Hungry?" The refrigerator was full of food, more food than Keisha had seen in one place outside of grocery stores. Real milk, fresh fruit, sandwich meat that wasn't expired. She stared in wonder. "Can I really eat anything? Anything you want?" She made herself a peanut butter sandwich with thick slabs of grape jelly, eating slowly to make it last. Richard watched her careful, grateful way of eating and felt his anger at Marcus burn hotter. "What are all those papers?" she asked, nodding toward his work. "Evidence, bank records, insurance policies, business contracts. I'm building a case against Marcus." "Like a puzzle?" "Exactly like a puzzle, and you're the most important piece." Richard leaned back in his chair. "Without your testimony, he could walk free." Keisha considered this seriously. "If he walks free, he'll hurt other people." "Yes." "Then we can't let that happen." Simple, direct, no room for negotiation. Richard's phone buzzed with an update from the hospital. Denise was responding well to treatment, her oxygen levels improving, the infection clearing. For the first time in weeks, she was sitting up and asking for her daughter. "Can we visit Mama today?" "Of course, but we'll have security with us, just to be safe." Keisha nodded, then surprised him by reaching across the table to pat his hand. "Thank you for taking care of us. Grandma always said kindness comes back around. Maybe this is your kindness coming back." Richard stared at her small hand on his and realized she was probably right. Marcus Davidson stared at the hospital surveillance footage on his laptop screen, his manicured fingers drumming against his mahogany desk. There was Richard, walking into Mercy General with a small black girl and an obvious bodyguard. "So he found his little witness," Marcus muttered, closing the laptop with a sharp snap. His phone rang. "We've located them both," the gravelly voice reported. "Hospital's crawling with private security, but we have eyes on the safe house, too." "Don't touch them yet. I have a better idea." Marcus walked to his office window, overlooking the city he'd planned to rule after Richard's convenient death. Now everything was falling apart because of one homeless child's inconvenient heroism. At the hospital, Denise looked more alive than she had in months. The gray pallor was fading, replaced by a healthy flush as the antibiotics fought her infection. She sat up in bed, actually hungry for the first time in weeks. "Look at you," she said, smoothing Keisha's hair. "Clean clothes, full belly. You look like a regular little girl instead of—" "No, instead of a street kid," Keisha finished matter-of-factly. "It's okay, Mama. I know what we were." "What we are," Denise corrected firmly, "is survivors. And now we're something else, too. We're family to someone who cares." Richard stood by the window, his security chief Carter murmuring updates in his ear. Everything seemed secure, peaceful even. That should have been his first warning. The attack came at sunset, just as visiting hours ended. Richard's phone rang as they prepared to leave the hospital. Marcus's name appeared on the screen. "Richard, thank God you're alive. I've been worried sick." "Cut the act, Marcus. I know it was you." A pause. Then Marcus's voice changed, dropping its concerned facade. "Proof is such a tricky thing, isn't it? Especially when it comes from the mouth of a homeless child." "What do you want?" "Simple. Call off your investigation. Forget about the bomb. In exchange, your new little family stays safe." Richard's blood chilled. If you touch them— Richard, I don't want to hurt anyone, but you're forcing my hand. Did you really think you could hide them forever? Through the hospital window, Richard saw black SUVs surrounding the building. Not police cars, private vehicles with tinted windows. Carter, Richard whispered urgently. We're compromised. His security chief was already moving, speaking rapidly into his radio. But Marcus had planned well. The exits were blocked, the stairs covered. You have 10 minutes, Marcus continued over the phone. Walk away from this investigation or learn what happens when you interfere with business. The line went dead. Carter grabbed Richard's arm. Back exit now. My men are creating a diversion. They moved quickly through hospital corridors, Keisha holding her mother's hand as Denise struggled to walk on unsteady legs. The IV had been pulled free, medical tape still clinging to her arm. What's happening? Denise asked, fear creeping into her voice. The bad man found us, Keisha said simply. But Mr. Richard's gonna protect us. They reached the service elevator just as gunfire erupted on the floor above. Carter's men engaging Marcus's hired thugs. The hospital's alarm system screamed, red lights flashing. Mama can't run, Keisha said, seeing her mother's labored breathing. Yes, I can, Denise gasped. For you, baby, I can do anything. They made it to the parking garage, Carter's backup team providing cover. But as they approached the armored car, Marcus himself stepped out from behind a concrete pillar, flanked by 2 men with guns. Hello, Richard. So good to see you again. Marcus looked exactly as Keisha had described. Tall, expensively dressed, with silver hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. But now Richard could see what he'd missed for 15 years. The cold calculation, the complete absence of conscience. Let them go, Marcus. Go. Your fight is with me. My fight is with anyone who threatens my future. Marcus's gaze fell on Keisha. Such a brave little girl, too brave for her own good. Keisha stepped forward, shielding her mother despite being barely waist-high to the armed men. You're the bomb man. You tried to kill Mr. Richard. Smart child. Pity intelligence doesn't guarantee longevity. Marcus, please. Richard started. Please. You think this is a negotiation? Marcus laughed. You were supposed to die cleanly. Now it's messy. Now there are witnesses. Now I have to clean up loose ends. One of his gunmen raised his weapon. That's when Emma Blackstone's scream echoed through the parking garage. Richard spun around to see his 15-year-old daughter being dragged from a van, her school uniform torn, terror on her young face. Daddy! Emma! Richard lunged forward but stopped as guns swung toward him. Marcus smiled his dead smile. Insurance policy. I borrowed your daughter from her private school. Amazing how easy it is to walk past security when you're a family friend. You bastard! Language, Richard. There are children present. Marcus checked his expensive watch. Here's how this works. You call the FBI, tell them you made a mistake about the bombing. Stress-induced hallucination, perhaps. In return, your daughter goes home safely. And if I refuse? Marcus's smile widened. Then both your daughters have accidents. Tragic, really. Home invasion at the safe house, random violence at a private school. These things happen in our dangerous world. Richard looked at Keisha, who was staring at Emma with recognition and dawning horror. Then at Denise, barely standing but ready to fight for her child. Finally at Emma, his precious daughter, terrified and helpless. Marcus had engineered the perfect trap. Save one family, doom the other. Choose blood over justice, or justice over blood. Tick-tock, Richard. Even my patience has limits. Richard's hands clenched into fists as he faced the impossible choice that would define not just his life, but the kind of man he truly was. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Richard stared at his daughter's terrified face, then at Keisha's determined eyes, weighing impossible choices. Then Keisha did something that changed everything. She stepped forward, small hands raised in surrender. I'll go with you if you let them go. Keisha, no! Denise gasped. Baby, you don't understand. Richard started. I understand plenty. Keisha's 8-year-old voice carried ancient wisdom. Bad men like him? They never keep promises anyway. He's gonna hurt everybody no matter what we do. She looked directly at Marcus. But I got something you need more than you need them dead. Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. What could you possibly offer me? Proof you planted that bomb. Real proof, not just what I saw. Keisha's voice stayed steady. I took pictures. The parking garage fell silent except for the distant wail of sirens. Pictures? Richard whispered. Found a phone in the dumpster. Still working, just a cracked screen. Keisha never took her eyes off Marcus. I thought the man in your car looked suspicious, so I took pictures. Got real clear shots of his face, the bomb, everything. Marcus's confident expression flickered. You're lying. Am I? Keisha reached slowly into her jacket pocket and pulled out a battered smartphone. The screen was spider-webbed but functional. Want me to show the police? Or you want to let everyone go and we'll talk about a deal? It was a bluff. A desperate, brilliant 8-year-old's bluff. But Marcus couldn't risk it being true. Show me the phone, he demanded. Let the girls go first. Keisha, don't, Emma called out, struggling against her captor. It's okay, Keisha said, surprising everyone by smiling at Emma. We're gonna be friends, I think. Both got brave hearts. Marcus weighed his options. The phone could contain nothing, or it could destroy him. Either way, the child was the key to everything. Fine, release the older girl. Emma ran to her father's arms as Carter's men inched closer through the shadows. Now the phone, Marcus said. Keisha looked at her mother, then at Richard. You trust me? With my life, Richard said without hesitation. Keisha nodded and tossed the phone to Marcus. He caught it and thumbed the power button. The cracked screen lit up, showing a photo gallery icon. He opened it eagerly, then his face went white. The photos were real. Crystal-clear shots of Marcus kneeling beside Richard's Mercedes, bomb components visible, his face unmistakably recognizable. Timestamps showing date and time, digital evidence that would destroy him in any court. How did a homeless child... My grandma taught me to document everything bad I see. Said truth is the only weapon poor people got. Keisha's voice carried quiet pride. I'd document lots of things. Police beating people, store owners cheating customers, rich men planting bombs. Marcus stared at the phone, realizing his fatal mistake. He'd underestimated the intelligence and resourcefulness of a child who'd learned survival in ways his privileged mind couldn't comprehend. Delete them, he snarled. Can't. Already uploaded to the cloud. 3 different accounts. Keisha tilted her head. Funny thing about free internet at libraries. Lets you do lots of stuff when you're smart enough. The lie was perfect, delivered with such casual confidence that Marcus believed it completely. His gunmen shifted nervously as Carter's team surrounded them. The FBI sirens were getting closer. Someone had called them during the standoff. You little... I also sent copies to someone safe, Keisha continued. If anything happens to me or my mama or the Blackstones, they got instructions to give everything to the police. Marcus's empire was crumbling, undone by a homeless child's quick thinking and moral courage. Richard stared at Keisha with something approaching awe. She'd turned their darkest moment into victory through pure intelligence and unshakable ethics. You saved us all, he whispered. We saved each other, Keisha corrected. That's what families do. As FBI agents poured into the parking garage, Marcus realized his final fatal error. He'd tried to intimidate someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The child he'd dismissed as powerless had just destroyed him with nothing but a broken phone and an unbreakable spirit. FBI agent Sarah Carter arrived with a tactical team and 15 years of experience reading crime scenes. What she found in the parking garage was a standoff that defied every protocol manual ever written. Mr. Blackstone, step away from the suspects, she commanded, but her eyes were drawn to the small girl standing fearlessly between armed men and hostages. Agent Carter, Richard called out, relief flooding his voice. This is Keisha Washington. She has evidence of the bombing attempt. Marcus sneered, still clutching the phone. Evidence from a homeless child? What jury would believe? FBI forensics would believe it, Keisha interrupted calmly. Pictures got metadata, GPS coordinates, digital signatures, all that CSI stuff. She looked at Agent Carter. You're gonna want to see this phone, ma'am. Agent Carter approached carefully, noting how the child commanded the attention of everyone present. Armed criminals, wealthy businessmen, even her own tactical team. What's on the phone? Carter asked. Marcus laughed desperately. Nothing. The ravings of a street child trying to... Photos of you planting a C4 device under my Mercedes, Richard said coldly. Time-stamped, geotagged, admissible in court. The tactical team spread out, weapons trained on Marcus's hired gunmen. The garage filled with red laser dots as sniper sights found their targets. I want to see those photos, Agent Carter said, her voice carrying federal authority. Now. Marcus backed against the concrete pillar, his expensive suit rumpled, his silver hair no longer perfectly styled. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized the magnitude of his miscalculation. You don't understand the situation, Marcus said desperately. Richard's company is worth hundreds of millions. The board was planning to force him out anyway. I was protecting our investors, our employees. By murdering him? Carter's voice carried disgust. It was supposed to be clean, quick. No one else was supposed to get hurt. Marcus's polished veneer cracked completely. Business decisions sometimes require difficult choices. No, Keisha said quietly, her voice carrying across the tense garage. Hurting people ain't never a business decision. That's just being evil and calling it something fancy. Marcus stared at her with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. You have no idea what you've done, child. The economic implications. I know you tried to kill a good man for money, Keisha interrupted, and I know that's wrong no matter how much money it is. Agent Carter signaled for the phone. Marcus looked around wildly, at his hired thugs now facing federal agents, at Richard's triumphant expression, at 15 years of carefully built lies crumbling into criminal charges. The photos, Carter demanded. Marcus's hand trembled as he held up the device. The cracked screen reflected the garage's fluorescent lights like broken promises. These pictures will destroy everything I've worked for, he whispered. Good, Keisha said simply. Bad things should be destroyed. Agent Carter secured the phone and immediately began examining the photos. Her expression grew grimmer with each image, clear, damning evidence of Marcus's crime. The metadata confirmed everything: date, time, location, even the serial number of the explosive device. Marcus Davidson, she said formally, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, kidnapping, domestic terrorism, and federal explosives violations. Wait, Marcus said, desperation making his voice crack. I can offer you information. Financial crimes, political corruption, things worth more than... Nothing's worth more than trying to murder your best friend, Richard said coldly. As Agent Carter read Marcus his rights, his hired gunmen surrendered without resistance. They were career criminals, not ideologues. When the money stopped flowing, their loyalty evaporated instantly. How? Marcus gasped as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. How does a homeless child destroy everything I built? Because what you built was built on hurting people, Keisha replied with the wisdom of someone far older than 8. Grandma used to say that houses built on lies fall down when the truth wind blows. Today was really windy. Marcus looked at her with something approaching awe. You planned this. All of it. The phone, the photos, even getting caught in the garage. It was all strategy. No, Keisha shook her head. I just did what was right each time I had to choose. Right adds up to good things. Wrong adds up to... She gestured at his handcuffs. That. Richard knelt beside Keisha, Emma joining them in a spontaneous embrace that included Denise, still weak but standing proud with the strength that comes from watching your child change the world. You saved us all, Richard whispered to Keisha. We saved each other, she corrected. That's what real families do. Agent Carter finished processing the scene and approached the unlikely family. Miss Washington, these photos will be crucial evidence in the federal case against Mr. Davidson. The trial will likely take months. Are you prepared to testify? Keisha looked at her mother, then at Richard and Emma, then back at Agent Carter. The weight of justice rested on her small shoulders, but she carried it with the same quiet strength she'd shown since the beginning. Yes, ma'am. It's the right thing to do. And besides, she smiled, I got a good family to help me through it. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, he turned for one last look at the child who'd brought down his empire. Keisha watched him go with pity rather than triumph. I hope prison teaches you how to be better, she called out to him. People can change if they want to, even you. Even facing life imprisonment, Marcus couldn't help but be amazed by her unwavering belief in human redemption. The garage slowly emptied as evidence was collected and statements taken. Richard stood with his arm around Emma, watching as Denise was helped into a medical transport to return to the hospital. "Dad," Emma said quietly, "Keisha's braver than anyone I know." "Braver than anyone any of us know," Richard agreed. "She taught me that real courage isn't about having no fear. It's about doing right despite the fear." Agent Carter approached with final paperwork. "Mr. Blackstone, this case will make national news. Your family's privacy might be compromised for a while." "Agent Carter," Richard said firmly, "Keisha Washington is my family now. Whatever protection my name and resources can provide, she has it, forever." As they prepared to leave the garage, Keisha took one last look at the spot where Marcus had made his final stand. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and courtrooms, media attention, and legal complexities. But tonight, she was going home with a family who loved her, to a mother who was healing, and to a future brighter than any she dared imagine when she'd whispered that first warning in a stranger's car. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the windows of the Blackstone family home, illuminating a scene that would have been impossible to imagine during those dark days in the parking garage. Keisha sat at the breakfast table, no longer the skeletal child in oversized clothes, but a healthy 8-year-old in a school uniform that actually fit. Her hair was braided with colorful ribbons, Emma's handiwork, and she was helping her adoptive sister with algebra homework. "If Train A leaves Chicago at 60 miles per hour, Emma read aloud. "Why does anybody need to know when trains are going to meet?" Keisha interrupted, making Emma laugh. "Just get on the train when it comes." Richard entered the kitchen, adjusting his tie. The past 6 months had changed him too. The lines around his eyes spoke of laughter now instead of stress, and his morning routine included hugging his daughters before checking his phone. "Ready for the big day?" he asked Keisha. Today was Marcus Davidson's sentencing. The trial had been swift and decisive. The photographic evidence, combined with Keisha's clear, unshakable testimony, had left no room for doubt. Marcus had eventually pleaded guilty to all charges in exchange for life imprisonment instead of the death penalty. "I'm ready," Keisha said simply. She'd grown into her role as the key witness with remarkable composure, never wavering in her commitment to justice. "I still can't believe you made up that whole thing about uploading photos to the cloud," Emma said, shaking her head in admiration. "Wasn't lying exactly," Keisha grinned. "I said, if anything happens to me, someone's got instructions to give everything to the police. That someone was me, and my instructions to myself was to give the phone to Agent Carter." Richard laughed, marveling again at his younger daughter's quick thinking and ethical flexibility. The sound of car doors slamming announced another arrival. Denise Washington, now Denise Blackstone Washington, came through the front door, her arms full of files from her new job as Director of Community Outreach for the Blackstone Foundation. "Morning, family," she called out, her voice strong and healthy. The cancer was in remission, her treatment successful, and she'd found purpose in helping other families navigate the system that had nearly failed her own. "Mama, you look fancy," Keisha said, admiring her mother's professional attire. "Got a meeting with the mayor about the new homeless shelter. Turns out having survived homelessness gives me some credibility in these discussions." Denise kissed her daughter's forehead. Funny how life works out. At the courthouse later that morning, Marcus Davidson stood before the judge, looking older than his years. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by prison orange. But when he saw Keisha in the gallery, something like respect flickered in his eyes. Judge Patricia Coleman read the sentence: life imprisonment without possibility of parole. 1 year later, Keisha stood before a room full of homeless children at the new Blackstone Community Center. At 9 years old, she'd become something she never expected: a teacher. "The most important thing Grandma taught me," she told the wide-eyed audience, "is that doing right doesn't depend on having much. Sometimes the people with the least got the most to give." In the back of the room, Richard watched his daughter with quiet pride. The foundation now operated 12 shelters, 3 medical clinics, and an after-school program that fed and educated hundreds of children daily. "Some of you might be scared," Keisha continued, "living in cars or sleeping in places that ain't safe. But being scared doesn't mean being helpless. Scared can make you smart, make you brave, make you notice things other people miss." She pointed to a photo on the wall, Her and Richard the day she'd warned him about the bomb, both covered in soot, both alive because of a child's courage. That man became my daddy because I chose to help instead of hide. Now we help people together, and someday when you're ready, you can help people too. After the presentation, as families gathered for dinner in the center's warm dining hall, Keisha pulled Richard aside. "Daddy, you know what I figured out?" "What's that, sweetheart?" "Kindness ain't just about being nice. It's about seeing when the world's broken and deciding to fix your piece of it." Richard smiled, wrapping his daughter in a hug. I couldn't have said it better myself. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing the city in fresh possibilities. Inside, over 100 people who might otherwise be hungry or cold sat around tables sharing meals and hope. Marcus Davidson had tried to destroy one life for money. Instead, his evil had planted seeds of kindness that now fed an entire community. Keisha Washington, once homeless, now home, had proven that heroes don't need capes or superpowers. Sometimes they just need the courage to whisper a warning in the dark. Call to action. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales that prove kindness is the most powerful force in the world. Comment below and tell us about a time when someone's small act of courage changed everything, because every hero's journey starts with someone brave enough to care.